Oak Street. Silent. Empty. Except for the house. At the very end, hidden behind overgrown ivy, twisted branches. A monstrosity. Locals whispered tales. Haunted, they said. Cursed. No one dared go near. Not anymore. Years passed. Seasons changed. The house remained, untouched, unvisited. A testament to forgotten memories and secrets that refused to die. It stood there, daring anyone to approach. A challenge whispered on the wind. Michael had always been drawn to the unknown, the mysteries that lay hidden in the shadows. He'd heard the stories, of course. Who hadn't? But he refused to be swayed by idle gossip. He parked his car a block away. The streetlights didn't reach this far. Only the moon illuminated his path. Each step closer sent a shiver down his spine. Excitement? Fear? He wasn't sure. The rusted gate groaned as he pushed it open. A warning? He stepped onto the overgrown path. Weeds snagged at his clothes like skeletal fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of decay. Ahead, the house loomed, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. The windows, like vacant eyes, stared back at him. He entered cautiously. The front door creaked open as if inviting him in. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and the passage of time. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting long, eerie shadows. A floorboard creaked upstairs. He froze, listening intently. Silence. He took a tentative step forward, then another. Each step echoed in the oppressive silence. He reached the bottom of the grand staircase. The wood was rotten, crumbling under his touch. He hesitated, then began to climb. A cold spot, right in the center of the landing. He could feel it even through his jacket. A presence, watching him. He was not alone. The house was a labyrinth of darkened rooms and narrow hallways. He wandered aimlessly, drawn deeper into its depths. The silence was broken only by the sound of his own footsteps and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Whispers. Soft, indistinct. They seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was mournful, filled with sorrow and regret. He reached a room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was empty, but he could sense that someone had been there recently. A faint floral scent lingered in the air. A woman's perfume. He recognized it from somewhere, but he couldn't quite place it. He reached the attic door. It was locked. He rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He kicked at it, once, twice. The wood splintered, and the door swung open. The attic was dark and dusty, filled with cobwebs and forgotten memories. He could make out the shapes of furniture, covered in white sheets like ghosts. A single ray of moonlight illuminated a small table in the center of the room. On the table lay a leather-bound journal. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the worn edges. As he opened it, a musty odor filled the air. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting. He began to read. The words swam before his eyes, painting a vivid picture of the past, a story of love, betrayal, and a broken heart. He was so engrossed in the journal that he didn't hear the footsteps behind him. A cold hand on his shoulder. He spun around, his heart racing. A woman stood behind him. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. "Who are you?" he stammered, his voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. She just stared at him, her eyes boring into his soul. He could feel her pain, her anguish, as if it were his own. "What do you want?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she pointed to the journal in his hands. He understood. She wanted him to know her story, to tell the world what had happened to her. But he had heard enough. He knew the truth, and it terrified him. He threw the journal on the floor and ran. He didn't look back. He just kept running, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for him to stop. He could hear her behind him, her footsteps echoing his own. But he didn't dare slow down. He had to get out of that house. He burst through the attic door, his clothes torn, his face scratched from his frantic escape. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of his car. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He finally managed to unlock the door and get inside. He slammed the door shut behind him, the sound echoing through the empty street. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He looked in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the woman's pale face staring back at him, but there was nothing there. He let out a sigh of relief. He was safe, or so he thought. As he started the engine, he noticed something strange. The car was filled with the same floral scent that he had smelled in the house. He turned around, his blood turning to ice. The woman was sitting in the back seat. Her eyes, filled with a cold, empty rage, met his. Her voice, a mournful whisper, filled the car. She spoke of her love, a man named Edward, who had lived in the house with her. She spoke of his betrayal, of how he had taken her life and buried her in the garden. She spoke of her anger, her rage, her desire for revenge. She had been trapped in the house for over a century, her spirit unable to find peace. She reached out a hand, her touch icy cold against his skin. He screamed, his voice raw with terror, as she leaned in close, her breath hot and rancid in his ear. "You will tell my story," she hissed, her voice filled with menace. "You will tell the world what happened here, or you will join me." Michael never returned to Oak Street. He never spoke of that night. But the memory of the woman in the house, her story, her pain, haunted him still. He could hear her whispers in the dead of night, feel her icy touch on his skin. The house at the end of Oak Street remained, a testament to forgotten memories and secrets that refused to die. And somewhere in the shadows, the woman's spirit still lingered, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. The echoes of her pain resonated in the silence, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface.